Yes.
Do you see Kelsey today? She's here? Okay, good. Okay. I, that's okay. I don't even want to know. Uh, oh boy. You s- you scared me. I'm like, oh no, not today. I actually should she here today? I'm like, thank you for. I'm glad you're here. You made it. All right. Um, the semester goes by so fast. It truly does. I know law school seems like this sort of race, this marathon that you never get to sort of end, but it will end. I promise you. At some point, you'll be done here. And the day to day, you'll forget. Hopefully, you remember something from law school. I don't know, but it's an honor to be here with you. I mean that sincerely. I don't take for granted for a minute that I get to do this job, and I love it. Hopefully, you enjoy it as well. So here we are, last day of class. Property 2 is almost over. Um, my goal for today, as I told you, is to go over the part 2 of the 2018 final exam. I think about half of you, if my numbers are right, were at the Langdell this weekend. Hopefully that was helpful for part 1. Any questions before I get started? No, we have at least one person at the Taylor Swift concert. How many else? Just one? Two? Was it worth it? Yeah. Yeah, I was not there. I saw Taylor Swift like in 2010 or 11 in Pittsburgh. Long time ago. Still clerking. You guys were still in diapers, basically. But this was way before she was pop. Actually, she was popular, not like now. Now it's like superstardom. Um, all right. So let me just give the general overview. If we went to my last exam review, this may sound duplicative, but I'll give it to you anyway. The exam itself, as I've said many times, you have 3 hours unless you have more time, which is for some of you do. But the exam is meant to be finished in 3 hours. You can finish in 3 hours. Um, you will not finish if you're flipping through your notes. If you have to actually look at your outline for more than a couple things, you're probably going to have time. So your notes will be useless, right? So it's an open book exam, but your notes will not be helpful for you. And don't even plan on trying to rely on them because you'll run out of time. The second big thing to think about is the word limit. There are 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1, 1,000 words. Part 2, 1,000 words. If you write 1,500 words on part 1 and 500 words on part 2, guess what? You didn't follow the instructions. I will only read half or about 2/3 of your first answer. I will stop reading 1,000 words. The software tells me where the cutoff is, and I stop reading. What that means is if part 1 has 5 questions, 1,000 word limit, that means, do the math, 200 words per question. That's not very much, 5 or 6 sentences. Okay, maybe 7 sentences for short sentences. You need to practice what 200 words feels like. And you think, oh, Josh, this is not fair. This is not fair. I promise you, every brief you write for any court with a word limit or a page limit, 100%. As a profession, we talk a lot. We can talk forever. That's why courts impose strict limits on how much you can give to a brief, right? Any oral argument you give is limited how many minutes you have, right? So pay attention to the time and pay attention to the word limit. And again, 3 hours, that means 90 minutes per each of the parts. If you're at the 90-minute mark and you haven't finished part 1 yet, stop. Go to part 2. You do not want to spend 2 hours on part 1 and then 1 hour on part 2 because you will not get your points. You will not finish part 2, right? Banking more points on part 1 will not help. Also, you don't know what's going to be on part 2. Maybe you know the stuff. Maybe like you really know covenants and covenants on part 2 and you don't know takings. Don't waste your time on the takings question. Go to the covenants question, right? You don't know what's going to be. So focus on limiting yourself. Okay. The word count in the software, it's kind of, everyone has used ExamSoft before. So this is a little bit tricky. By default, it shows you the character count. It spits out how many characters, which is not very useful. There's a little document icon, it's a piece of paper, right? You click that and a word count will pop up. If you don't know how to do this, go do a practice exam in ExamSoft and just try it out. You don't want to have to experiment on the day of the exam. You have other things on your mind. All right, with me? Okay. All right. So the cover sheet will look, I mean, I might change a few words, but it'll look just like this. Someone actually asked my other class, Josh, it says 2018, it's 2023. I know this is an old exam. I'm going to show you an old exam. And everyone knows what time it starts. Is it? Okay. 4 o'clock. Don't get here later. You won't be allowed in. So please just get here on time, 4 o'clock. Okay. That's the worst when someone gets stuck. For Saturday, it won't be a big deal with traffic, but having exams during the week where there's traffic and people don't, if you're not there in time, they won't let you in. And I mean, I know that sounds awful, but it's really distracting when someone comes in late and you're just focusing. And so you have to also think about the sanity of the other, 60 people in the class. All right. Again, so part 1 will be 50%. Part 2 will be 50%. I know this sounds dumb, but read the damn instructions. Please, please, please read the instructions. I am giving you very important information. I'm also telling you, if you pay attention, what I'm going to ask you, right? The information I'm giving you is giving you a signal about what I want to inquire. So I'm not going over part 1, but I'll just talk about it for a minute, right? I say the courts in this jurisdiction follow all American common law rules, are bound by the Constitution, and the statute of limitations 5 years. Oops, let me do that. Why would I say you're bound by the Constitution? That can only mean one thing. There's a takings question, right? I don't just like put that in arbitrarily. We didn't do much common law in here, right? This is not a Commerce Clause question, right? This is not about the taxing power. It's about takings. And why would I say the statute of limitations 5 years? And I say all statute of limitations are 5 years. That means there's probably an adverse possession issue, right? That's probably what I'm asking you. Let's go to part 2, which is what I asked you to complete for class today. Okay, it begins in Gotham City. If you're not a comic book fan, this is where Batman lives. If you don't know Batman, it doesn't matter. It makes no difference to the question, but I like things that I find fun. It makes it easier to write. So Gotham City is a superhero. I'm sorry, in Gotham City, Batman is a superhero who fights evil villains and engages in sophisticated property transactions. Of course he does. Please write a memo of no more than 1,000 words addressing 5 issues affecting, and I give you the names of the people. So Alfred, Batman, Dracula, and Joker. If you notice A, B, C, D, right? That's not inadvertent. I deliberately pick names. They're in alphabetical order. That way you don't get confused by names. I remember having exams like, yeah, Adam and Al and Alex, 3 people with the letter A in an exam. No need. Okay, so I tell you who the names are. Also, we have several pieces of property. Caveacre, Wayneacre, Badacre, Fraudacre, and Arkacre. Okay. Fraudacre means there's probably fraud going on. I'm just sort of telling you, right, straight up what's going on. I learned that the Gotham District Court applies all the American common law rules. Okay, that's very important for you to know. Throughout this semester, we've had certain modern jurisdiction rules and certain common law jurisdiction rules. And in your notes, at least I hope, you've distinguished those. Don't follow modern rules. So for example, if it's from New Jersey, it's probably not a common law rule, right? Our beloved friends in the Garden State just make stuff up, and that's what they do. That's true, right? So that's probably not a good place to cite New Jersey law here, or California, or maybe New York, right? Texas case, you're probably good. I tell you, we're using a race notice statute, right? So that tells you we got a recording question, right, with the Recording Act. And remember, the race notice statute is not the race statute. It's not the notice statute. There are specific rules you have to follow. I'm being very explicit. There's a Texas anti-deficiency statute. So now you got a mortgage question with foreclosure, right? Again, just by taking 5 seconds to read the instructions, I've told you like 3 of the 4 questions I'm going to ask. Also, there's going to be some sort of due process or takings issue because I'm talking about the Constitution. All right. So read the instructions very, very carefully. What I recommend you do next, and again, you're welcome to ignore me, as people often do, is read the entire exam top to bottom straight through. Don't start answering until you read everything. And there's a very simple reason why. It's for your advantage. Very often, I might say something in question 2 or 3 that helps you with question 1, right? Maybe there's something in question 5 that says, oh, wait a minute, that's why I answered question, right? Getting to the end might trigger something which is helpful to you. Also, in terms of as they say in MBA, load management, right? You have limited time, right? If you skim through and you know that takings is your weak spot, and you know that maybe you really get easements and covenants, you might say your advance, okay, let me just make sure I put a little bit more time on the easement and covenant question to bank in my points. I don't kill myself in the takings question, right? If you know everything perfectly, good for you, right? You're awesome. But not everyone has that luxury. So by reading through top to bottom, you create kind of a roadmap of where you need to go and how to allocate your time. Because again, on any exam, you decide how you allocate your time. Now, I suggest you do them in order. Don't do them out of order. That's risky, but at least you know how to allocate your resources. Any questions so far? All right. Now the format will look something like this, where I'll say question 1, I'll have a couple sentences and then a question. Right? That's real short. I mean, look, that's like what, 4 or 5 sentences plus a question. So it's not if you're like this massive fact pattern that says, please discuss, right? I am asking very precise questions following a particular fact pattern. I didn't used to do it. I used to have this long fact pattern with a question at the end. I sort of changed it. So maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I think this works better. But now the question will be something like, how should the court resolve this dispute? Which is very precise. What was the question?
Is the exam going to be printing or going to be?
Yes, yes. I asked again. They said they'll have paper. If they don't, I tried, but my understanding is will be paper. Please type though. Please, no blue books. Please, please, please. Don't handwrite your exam. It's not to your advantage, not to anyone's advantage. They never take it back. One student got an A handwriting. She was a very bright student. This was a second career for her, and she just didn't like computers. But please, please type. But yeah, she had gone to college many years ago. She just didn't like the typing. Okay, but she did well. That's rarity. All right, so can I start number 1? Okay. I know you'll have thoughts. What about this? What about this? Wait till I finish doing it, and then you can sort of jump in and because I might cover whatever it is you're talking about. All right. So the first question is going to be a covenant question, which I know gives a lot of kids difficulty, which is why I assigned this exam in particular. I thought this was actually a good covenant question. I like this one. Looking back at it a couple years later, this was 5 years ago. Time ago. Goodness. Alfred owned Caveacre and fee simple. Okay. Batman owned Wayneacre and fee simple. Okay, you know where this is going. The lots border each other. Alfred sold Caveacre to Batman with a covenant that the property could only be used for residential purposes. So again, Batman now owns Caveacre with a covenant on it. Okay. At the same time, Batman sold Wayneacre to Alfred with a covenant that the property could only be used for commercial purposes. So again, Wayneacre for commercial, Cave acre for residential. This is what we call a mutually restrictive covenant, right? We talked about these in class, where both sides of the diagram are both dominant and servient. Again, both sides of the diagram are simultaneously dominant and servient. Okay. Why does that matter? Because the benefits and burdens will run on both sides. Now, I also gave you some information. I said that the land was conveyed at the same time the covenant was created. Why is that important? That's important because we have horizontal privity or privity of estate, right? Privity of estate, horizontal privity is when you convey the land with the covenant on it. And at common law, that was the way you would create a covenant. You had to have privity of estate. Okay. All right. So now we see on our next sentence, it says, and I'll show you the diagram in a moment. Actually, I'll jump to it now. So I made this diagram in the memo. Here it is, which I think is prettier than the one in the book, but I think works well, right? So we start up here. We have Alfred and Batman, which, in case you didn't guess, is A and B. Alfred now has Wayneacre with a covenant restricting it to commercial use. Batman now has Cave Acre with a restricted covenant for residential purposes. Okay, and everyone agrees there's horizontal privity between the two of them, right? And just to be clear, it's going both ways. Horizontal privity from A to B, and horizontal privity from B to A. Don't forget that. Everything goes both ways. With a mutually restrictive covenant, the arrows goes both ways. Are you with me? All right, let's go back to the question, then I'll keep reading. Next sentence says, Alfred sells Dracula a life estate in Wayneacre. So again, Alfred sells Dracula a life estate in Wayneacre. What does that look like? Well, there's Dracula. He has a life estate. Okay, so what does that mean? Alfred conveyed less than his full bundle of sticks. He did not convey his full interest. He conveyed only part of his interest. What does that tell us then? A benefit runs when you convey any interest, right? So the benefit runs to Dracula. But which benefit is it? Let's just be very clear. It's the benefit that Cave Acre remains residential. Again, when I say the benefit runs to Dracula, the benefit is that Cave Acre remains residential. Does the burden run from Alfred to Dracula? The answer is no. Why? Because for the burden to run a common law, A must be his entire bundle of sticks, everything, whatever he has, fee simple, everything. Okay. So now we have a weird situation, right? There's still a covenant on Wayneacre, right? It's still restricted to commercial use, but Dracula cannot be sued if he builds a house, which he will. We'll get to that in a minute. All right. Everyone see this so far? In your notes, when you get to your covenant question, draw your diagram, right? If you see there's a covenant question, draw your diagram. It may not be exactly like this, but I can only ask this question so many ways. I'm not that creative, but you have to think very carefully about this diagram. All right, let's go to the next sentence. Then we see that Batman sells Cave Acre to Catwoman in fee simple. Let's go back to our diagram. Batman gives his entire bundle of sticks to Catwoman, right? Everything. Does the benefit run? Yes, it does. And which benefit is that? The benefit that Wayneacre remains commercial. So now Catwoman has the benefit. And she can sue if there's a violation of the covenant on Wayneacre. Does the burden run? Yes, it does. Why? Because the entire bundle of sticks was conveyed from Batman to Catwoman. Be simple. If you want to call that vertical privity, you can. I don't like that, but you can call it that if you will. But I would just say that the burden runs down from Batman to Catwoman. Are you okay with that? You looked a little, you winced a little bit.
I was confused because I'm looking at it. I thought Cave Acre was the commercial.
Did I screw it up?
It's not. I wrote them.
Okay, I'm good. Okay, good. Okay. I make mistakes. So if I make a mistake, you can tell me. Okay. Okay, that's fine. So, okay. All right. So, everyone with me so far. So, again, Dracula has the benefit, but not the burden. Catwoman has both the benefit and the burden. With me. Let's go back to our question. Okay, the question then says Dracula builds a house on Wayneacre. Dracula builds a house on Wayneacre, and Catwoman builds a factory on Caveacre. So they both screw up, right? They both do things they're not supposed to do. Again, Dracula builds a house on Wayneacre, and remember, Wayneacre is restricted to commercial usage. And then Catwoman builds a factory on Caveacre, which again, remember, is restricted to residential. So they're both in violation of their covenant. What happens next? Right. So the question says, Dracula sues Catwoman to enjoin the operation of the factory. And when I say enjoin, that means get an injunction. That's just what I'm asking for, right? Okay. Dracula sues Catwoman to enjoin the operation of the factory. So let's just go to our diagram. D sues C, right? Dracula sues Catwoman. Well, let's ask ourselves, did the burden run from Batman to Catwoman that you have to have residential usage? The answer is yes, right? The full bundle of 6 was given. So Catwoman has the burden. Because you'll also have to ask, does Dracula have the benefit? In other words, does Dracula have the benefit of the covenant on Caveacre? The answer is yes. He has a life estate. That's enough. That'll do it. So can Dracula sue Catwoman? The answer is yes. But notice we put in the question, I said injunction, enjoin. What is the remedy usually for a real covenant law? Damages. So it's almost like a trick. You're so excited you figure out the damn covenant issue, you forget the remedy. And I gotta tell you, I remember grading this one a couple years ago, and so many students got the covenant issue perfect, and they said, "Yeah, give him an injunction." So I think, well, I'll show you the answer in a minute. But always keep in mind that when you have a covenant issue, real covenant law, the preferred remedy is one of damage. Now, if you want an injunction, you can seek what's called equitable servitude, right? We'll talk about that in a few moments, right? But a lot of people last year got really close to an 8 or a 9, then they said, "Yeah, injunction's fine," and they dropped that to a 7. Like they did everything perfect. So, what's the you spiked the football at the 1-yard line. They were almost there, and then they just dropped in the last minute. Remember, there was an NFL play some years ago where a person actually fumbled at the 1 yard. He was so excited, he just sort of dropped it. He hadn't crossed the end zone yet. And what was that?
Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, he basically dropped the ball at the 1 because he's so excited. He started celebrating a yard too early. It happens anyway. So don't spike the football too early. All right. So the next part of the question asks, Catwoman sues Dracula to demolish the house. Again, this is an injunction. You want to court to order a demolition, right? Now, I'm sorry. So this case is Catwoman suing Dracula. Does Catwoman have the benefit? Yes, she does, because she got a fee simple. Does Dracula have the burden? No, he does not. The burden did not run to him. Who keeps the burden? Hey, Alfred. So really, Catwoman sued the wrong person. And if Catwoman were to just sue Dracula, hey, dismissed. Wrong. You sued the wrong person. Go sue Alfred, and Alfred can go after his tenant, right, with whom he's in privity. But Catwoman cannot go after Dracula because the burden did not run. Everyone get the gist of that question? Yes, Sinclair.
So when you're drawing your diagram, up to the top, when we start, the plans at first, we always put what they've been given.
You don't have to, but that makes it easier in my mind, right? I want to know who owns it after the initial round of transaction. I think that's a good place to start. Questions? I'll show the Model A Plus answer in a moment, but I'm happy to pause for questions. Sorry, and you're behind me. I'm sorry, I'm giving you my back the entire semester. I have to remember not to do that. It's not nice. You're paying just the same tuition everyone else is. I'm giving you my back. these classrooms are just not well laid out. They're just really. I know I've tripped in that stupid thing so many times. It's really dangerous. All right, let me go. Patty, go ahead. That was her question a moment ago, I think.
But doesn't,
Well, as long as you explain they swapped, right? Because the very first sentence is they basically swap properties. Alfred, start with K Baker. Oh, are you saying can you flip in your diagram?
yeah, because if you do that, then
It will make no difference. As long as, I mean, look, I do A, B because it's alphabetical order, but if you want to do B, A, you can, but it's the exact same question. If you flip in your notes, it makes no difference. It shouldn't make a difference. Right? Whether you put K Baker on the left or the right, it makes no difference. You seem a little uncertain.
that's because I've already looked at on the left, that isn't vertical privilege. and then just
You have
say
to, with a
it's-
mutually restricted covenant, you can't use that rule, right? The diagram you have in your book is not a mutually restrictive covenant, right? Once you realize that you have a question with a mutually restrictive covenant, everything gets doubled up. The left is the right and the right is the left. So you have to remember, this is why when I put my arrow here, I wrote what's a benefit, what's a burden. You would never do that in the old diagram. Yeah, I think the book should actually have a diagram and a mutually restrictive covenant because they're a lot trickier. I usually ask about them because I think they're more common. Or I say common, but they pop up a lot. Is that a hand? Okay. Let's. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Would it have been a space to talk about the elements of establishing the book over there as well?
Probably.
Wouldn't you need that for anything to run?
You can do it. You're just copying stuff from your notes though. So I mean, it doesn't really show me you know anything. So let's just see what the A+ person wrote of the model. And again, when I say the else not the wrong part. So this is actually when I say the A+, this may not be a 10. I actually don't remember, but it's probably usually the A+ is either a 9 or a 10. There's not always, I don't always give a 10 for a question. I can maybe go through all of your papers and say, well, no one got a 10. Happens. All right. So the student writes, under the common law for covenants burden to run, it needs horizontal and vertical privity. Okay, I'm not crazy about that answer, but sure. Horizontal privity is privy of a state, meaning the covenant was conveyed in the same transaction as the land. Okay. All right. Here, there's horizontal privity because Alfred sold K Baker to Batman with restriction reserved. I would say the covenant reserved rather than restriction. There's vertical privity because Batman sold K Baker to Catwoman in fee simple, meaning he conveyed his full interest. Okay. I would make clear that because that the burden runs, right? I mean, he kind of I shouldn't say he, but the student sort of hid the ball. The important point here is that the burden ran from Batman to Catwoman. Right? That's the important point, which I don't think was written clearly here. Dracula can sue Catwoman because there was no requirement of horizontal vertical privity for the benefits run on common law. Again, I think that's correct, but I would simply say that the benefit runs from Alfred to Dracula. So it's not the best written answer. The last sentence, though, they actually got the remedy issue right. But typically, the remedy for violation of covenant is damages, not injunction. Okay, so what did the student not actually do? Let's go back to the question, right? Thank you, Max. Exactly right. This is like this sort of the frustration that you think you're done and you didn't actually answer the darn question. So I would say the court should rule that the court should rule that Dracula can sue Catwoman and get damages, and then you can say that Catwoman cannot sue Dracula because the burden didn't run to Dracula. Like that's a sentence or two, but that's actually answering the question that I asked you. I know that sounds really obvious, but most people don't actually do that. They get so excited, they're so like focused on their answer, and they sort of just don't answer the damn question. So I think this would probably be, if I had to guess, an eight, maybe a 9. And maybe I'm being mean now, but probably an 8 or 9. Max.
So you said like those two sentences would have been the answer. You just put those two sentences, would you get full points?
Absolutely not. You gotta show your work. I mean, you'll get some, but not full credit. Don't do that. All right, and then the second paragraph. I like paragraphs actually. That doesn't hurt your word limit, right? A paragraph doesn't hurt your. I like spacing. I've told you this before. I can't remember what year it was, but a student basically put the entire answer as a block with a single line break because I think they thought I was wasting a character, right? So it's basically all 5 answers a single paragraph, and it was very hard to actually read where one thing began and one ended. I had to, and they didn't even put like number 1. It was just sentences. I had to figure out where the. Just don't do that to me. Just put a number. Question 1, fine, 2 words. That's okay. You're allowed to. That's not going to kill your word limit. This is formatting like this is what I'm looking for. All right. Catwoman cannot sue Dracula to enforce the commercial purpose covenant because there's not vertical privy between Alfred and Dracula. So the burden did not run. Correct. However, Catwoman might still try to sue Alfred because there's privy of estate between Batman and Alfred when Waker was originally conveyed. Right? If Catwoman cannot enforce a covenant, she may argue that there was an equitable servitude. Right? That was good. Right? For a servitude, there must be, and this is, I think, your question before, intent to bind successors, touch and concern the land, and notice. Right? I mean, that sentence is a completely throwaway because it doesn't actually do anything. They're not actually analyzing whether any of those 3 factors were satisfied. It's just, okay, they say that Catwoman will argue Batman intends to maintain the restriction, it touches and concerns the land. Why is it touching concern the land, right? In other words, you're just giving something and actually giving analysis. But the last one I think is actually the important one, right? It's not clear that Dracula had actual constructive notice. I don't know if that's true. Maybe not. I'm not sure. Especially if the covenant was recorded, but that's not really in the facts. I think this I'd probably give a 9 if I had to guess because I got Naponzit. I think that was a decent answer. Probably would put the type answer. Okay. Yes, 1 and 2.
So that's kind of the part I was wondering on, not just like listing elements, but like saying.
Yeah, you got to
there's an
discuss
official
it.
Transaction, there's probably in writing, therefore
I would say that, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the fact is that there was a covenant. It was probably recorded. I think you can make that inference. Yes, Kelsey?
Curve it all, so you're saying that some questions, the best out of all class would be an 8 or a 9, so kind of bump that one up to.
No. I only curve at the end. And if people don't get statistics, you all naturally curve, right? And in any group this large, the curve is natural. I don't have to do anything. Every year, an A is around an 80, 81, 82. It doesn't matter what year I teach. It's always about the same, right? A B is usually in the mid to low 70s, right? A C is low 70s, and then a D is below a 60, and then you're in trouble, right? But whenever I put okay, so there are about 60 of you, right? I put all of you in a spreadsheet. And I sort of sort you numerically, and you clump together pretty naturally. Where there are a lot of people who cluster around a 70, and that's the B mark, and then maybe about 15% or around an 80, and that's the A mark, and the other tail much the same. So I don't have to do anything. But within an individual question, there's no curving.
Yeah, so one thing I wasn't too sure about is like in some covenants there's language like, and all assignees are bound by this, and that's like the second element, the intent to bind the successors. I kind of just like assumed that there was an intent to bind the successors because like they put it in writing.
I think so. Yeah. This is sort of this question you asked before. If there's actually a written covenant, that's almost certainly going to be something that's a recorded document. Okay. What other questions? Number 1. What else do you have? I like this covenant question. It wasn't too hard, but I think it was required to sort of slog through it. Is that a hand? Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't see him.
Dracula was given half the bundle. That person cannot be sued.
No, the burden doesn't run.
Vertical privity.
There is not vertical privity for the burden to run if they get only a life estate. Go back to our diagram, okay? When a life estate was given from A to D, right? When the life estate was given from A to D, the burden does not run. There's no vertical privity. There's vertical privity on the other side with Catwoman, but there's no vertical privity on Dracula side. Does that make sense? That's why these mutually restrictive covenants are tricky, because everything gets mirrored. You can do everything twice. All right. Anything else in question number 1? Go ahead.
So I know, Chief Austin, you mentioned that you need to include authority for the answer,
Yeah.
but with this model answer, there's really only one.
The only case was actually Neponset, because that was an equal servitude case. There wasn't, for covenant questions, there's not much authority.
So, but like for other ones, it would follow
Yeah.
that there would be multiple case names.
Yeah. I mean, with easements and covenants, just think back to our casebook. There weren't many cases in those chapters. So I think that's right.
Okay. And would you want it to be like a condensed rule statement with the case name, or do we need to go in?
Well, look what the student did here. I think actually what the student did here, I think actually works well. I wish I had a remote that could trigger my computer from. I mean, for next year, I'll figure out how to do that. Right. Where the student. Right. It touches under Neponset, right? But it's not clear that Dracula had actual constructive modes. I think that's good. Right. Especially since Neponset was so open-ended. It's good. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that works for me. Yes, ma'am.
If your instructions do not say this is a common law jurisdiction, would
Oh.
Catwoman be able to sue Dracula because he has some?
Correct. Yes, correct. I thought you were asking a different question. I'll get to in a minute. But under the modern rule, they've actually abolished privity. But I promise you, I will always give you a covenant question that's common law. That'd be too easy, right? If I say you're in New Jersey, sue whoever the hell you want, right? No, that's a very easy question to ask. Now, I thought what you're asking is Neponset a common law case? Ooh. I mean, Neponset suggested it was following the common law. I'm skeptical, so I could go either way on that one. That's what I thought you were asking me. But is Neponset it's from New York, right? Is it a common law case? I would probably say no, but the court itself said it was. All right. Questions on number 1. Can you go to number 2? Let's do number 2. All right, number 2 begins. Okay, this is the recording question. I heard a weird noise. Okay, number 2. All right, so when I give you a recording question, I'll usually give you either dates. Here I've made easy to give you dates of the week. Yes, Al. Yeah.
The plus answer talks about the God, living up in God. So I think.
Where's that?
Never mind. But one thing I was thinking about is like actually I was thinking about it. I'm like a doctor of like unclean hands, and so like he's kind of violating covenant, but he's not really because of
Who's he? Who's he?
Dracula is violating covenant, but he's not really because of burning.
No, you can't be expected to be bound by an obligation that you're not bound by. So I don't think it's unclean hands. Right. In fact, the reason why he purchased the life estate so that he wouldn't be bound by it. I mean, we all have to follow the rules. We're not subject to imaginary rules, right? If the rule says you're not bound, you're not bound. Right? You're not required to be a good citizen, right? You can be someone who takes advantage of rules. Let's go number 2, please. All right, number 2 says, okay, so I'm giving you several days of the week, and that's why I'm trying to give you a sequence. That's why I'm giving you the dates. I can give you dates also, January, February, whatever, but this makes it a little bit easier. Monday, Tuesday, no. On Monday, Joker sells. Oh, you got that one. Happy days. On Monday, Joker sells Fraudacre to Alfred. Okay, never buy property called Fraudacre. You can get screwed, right? That's just, especially from a guy named Joker. Okay, you're toast. On Monday, Joker sells Fraudacre to Alfred. Okay. On Tuesday, surprise, surprise, Joker sells Fraudacre to Batman, who did not know about Alfred's deed. Okay, so Batman is bona fide. All right. But remember, what kind of jurisdiction are we in? Race, notice. If you forgot that, this answer will be all wrong, right? If you answer this as notice or race, you got the question wrong. On Wednesday, we learned that Alfred goes to City Hall to record his deed for Fraudacre. Okay. Again, remember, he bought first. And he records. So far, so good. But the clerk screws up. The clerk accepts Alfred's deed and he records it in the grantor index, but forgets to record it in the grantee index. Why is that important? Because now it will be a lot harder to do a title search. Not impossible, a lot harder to do a title search. Next sentence says, Thursday, Joker offers to sell Fraudacre to Catwoman. Then Catwoman performs a title search of Fraudacre. Would that title search have turned up the deed from Joker to Alfred? We'll get to that in a minute, okay? Then later that day, Catwoman purchases Fraudacre from Joker and promptly records her deed in both indexes. Is she bona fide? All right. Then on Friday, Batman records his deed. Is Batman bona fide? Right? In other words, he didn't know on Tuesday about Alfred's deed, but could he have learned later before Friday? And could he have learned about Catwoman's deed? All right, I want to see the issues. Okay. Now, I think, and I wrote this question in a very sort of weird way. The fact that Catwoman's deed is only recorded in one index and not the other, I don't think actually makes a big difference, right? Because if you are a competent title searcher, you're going to search all the books for all the names, right? And if you know that Joker is your seller, you're going to search both the grantee and the grantor index, right? And eventually you will find that Joker sold it to Catwoman. I'm sorry, that Joker sold it to Alfred. Thank you. Okay. That part I don't think matters very much. All right. So the question again is who wins here? I think the answer is Alfred, right? Right. I think Alfred's the strongest claim. He purchased first. He was bona fide, and he was the first to record. You say, wait a minute, Josh, he didn't record in both books. Fine, right? And I think you make that argument, but he went to the office in good faith. He tried to act diligently. The government official screwed up, but still he provided notice to the world. So I think Alfred wins here as the strongest claim. Okay. Let me jump to the A+, and I'll call on you if you have any questions. So the A+ student wrote, oh, and by the way, ignore Messersmith as the case is no longer in your book. Just ignore that. It was an okay case. Okay, so under a race notice statute, subsequent purchase is protected against prior and recorded instruments only if blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I mean, look, again, this is a sentence copied verbatim from your notes. You don't need to do this, right? You're wasting your words. I know what the rule is. This is literally verbatim from the textbook, right? You just don't have to do this, right? I know what a race notice statute is. Okay, then it says, Alfred, okay, this is, I mean, the question in earnest begins here, right? There are 3 lines that are just completely superfluous. That got you a grand total of 0 points. Alfred will argue that he was the first to purchase Fraudacre and took the necessary steps to record his deed before B recorded and before C did her title search. Oh, the sentence is way too long. Or recorded and should not be responsible for the clerk's mistake. Use shorter sentences. I don't like this because there's so many ors. I've lost track of actually what the sentence structure is, right? This is actually a very complex sentence, so I would break it up, right? I would say, like, Alfred has a stronger claim than Batman XYZ, right? Alfred has a stronger claim than Catwoman XYZ, right? Alfred has a stronger claim than Batman, whatever it is. Just give me a sentence or 2 for each of the people. Don't try and merge all together. I'm sorry? No. One sentence for each is not that bad. No, it won't be bad. I'm sorry. So Hughes is the case we no longer have in the casebook, so I'm sorry. It's not very important, right? You don't even really need Hughes for that. Batman will argue. These sentences are way too long. Batman will argue under Hughes that he was a bona fide purchaser that purchased Fraudacre without notice because Alfred not yet recorded. Okay. The problem with that is by the time Batman records, Alfred's deed was already in the book. So I don't think that works. Okay, then it says Catwoman will argue that she was without notice because she properly conducted a title search starting in the grantee index and did not see Alfred's name for purchasing it. Additionally, she'll argue that the clerk's mistake rendered The recording of Alfred's deed is defective. I don't think that's right. So again, what's missing from this question? Who actually has the strongest claim? I mean, again, look at the question that I asked you. How should the court resolve the dispute? Either the first sentence or the last sentence should be Alfred should prevail. But at the beginning or the end, I don't either one. I don't really care which one that is. But I would say at the beginning or the end. I think what this student was doing was putting basically the strongest arguments in favor of each person, which is not what I was really asking for. Which is good. I mean, you can do that, but you have to actually answer the darn question. Sensing a pattern, right? I think I'm giving you the A pluses, right? The best ones. This is probably a 9, if I had to guess, right? Maybe an 8, probably a 9, if I had to guess. Again, because I had some cases discussed that you no longer have, so maybe you don't know them, but this is a good answer. You didn't actually answer the question. Grading is a hard process. Well, I have to grade 100 of these. I had last fall, I had 165 property papers to grade. Oh man, it was a lot of papers to grade. Oh, sorry, last spring, I should say. That was a lot. Yes, Kelsey.
So
That's okay.
if there's a rule, we don't need to waste time saying it, just apply it.
Correct. Yeah. Right. I mean, and to be frank, I don't know if they actually even apply this rule fully, right? Because what you really need to say is Alfred prevails because he purchased as a bona fide purchaser without prior notice and was the first to record, right? I mean, if you just rephrase that first sentence with the word Alfred in it, you have answered the question, right? I mean, again, let me just change 2 words. Change subsequent purchaser to Alfred. If you just change a few words in the sentence, it actually gets you points. I don't know. Leave me alone, right? But you actually get points. This is worth 0. Something the number is greater than 0, right? If you just, in other words, if you're just copying something from your outline, I can't give you credit for it because that's not actually learning. 1, 2.
So I understand how Alfred could be the BFP, but could you also argue that Catwoman would be the BFP? Because I said that when you do a title search, you'll look in the
Grantor. She'll look in the grantee.
Grantee first.
Yeah.
But then I also mentioned that she should have did due diligence.
Correct.
The court will most likely.
Which case? Which case? Harper. Yeah. And what's the other one with the item sonaz? I'm blanking on the name. Thank you, Orby Buyer. Yeah, either of those cases. I think that's actually a good place to bring in cases about what is due diligence, right? How much do we expect people to do? Do you expect them to search both indexes for the name of Joker? I think the answer is yes, but maybe you think that's too much. And then Orby Buyer might be a good case to bring in. Good.
So like as far as reporting, once you take your deed to the reporting office, like is your job done as
Yeah, so I've asked this question in the past before where, they bring a deed to be recorded and the clerk just loses it and never records anything. And I think that's actually a closer call whether that the subsequent purchase is a BFP because it was not recorded anywhere. Here, at least it was partially recorded and there's enough to put the subsequent buyer on notice. But let's say you bring it to the office and the clerk just like drops in the garbage by mistake. I think that would not be enough to put a subsequent buyer on notice. But you're screwed because you didn't record first, right? So in that regard, it is unfair. And you can't really sue the government because they have immunity. I mean, if it was a gross error, maybe, but generally, if it's a clerical error, or imagine, they entered in a computer system and there was a computer bug and the record just, glitched and it didn't record. Okay, what are the questions number 2? So I'll give you my back again. Questions on number 2. Good. That's why I turned around. Perfect.
Because I just want to make sure I don't have this fluff in here. I kind of like. I did have the rule part. I know I need to get rid of that, but I wanted to say that they have a duty to search a chain of title when it's like properly documented. So like, could you also add that to my argument of why Catwoman could win?
Because you think the chain of title was not clear enough.
Right.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I think Harper against Paradise is a good case for that. I mean, that again, they brought in some other cases that are in your book. I think Harper is good here. I think Orby Buyer is a good case here. I think you have some cases you can talk about. Anything else on number 2? How are we feeling so far? Okay, good. Let's do number 3. Making good time also. I'm halfway done. Class. Or 45 minutes being with me. All right, number 3. Okay, this is our mortgage question. It says Batman sought to purchase Batacre at a price of $100,000. He paid, I'm sorry, this one involves math, sorry. He paid $10,000 for a down payment from his own savings. Okay. So that means he took out loans for at least 90. Gotham Bank gave Batman a note for $80,000, which was secured by the first mortgage. Okay. Arkham Bank gave Batman a note for $10,000, which was secured by a second mortgage. Then we learned that over the next year, Batman pays $5,000 to Gotham Bank and $5,000 to Arkham Bank, which means there's $75,000 left on one and $5,000 left on the other. But Batman falls on hard times and defaults on the mortgages. Okay. Gotham Bank moves to foreclose Batacre. At the sale, there is only one bidder. Shocker. A representative of the bank. Okay. And the bid is for $50,000. So again, how much was owed on the note to Arkham Bank? It was for Arkham Bank was $5,000. Okay. After the conclusion of the sale, Gotham Bank and Arkham Bank both seek deficiency judgments against Batman. Right? So then Bat moves to set aside. So what's tricky here is that there's two banks, right? So it's kind of like Murphy versus FinDev Corp, but a little bit different. And at least in Murphy, the bank that held the mortgage was also the sole bidder. But here, the bank that held the mortgages, there were two of them, right? Gotham moved to foreclose, but then the Arkham rep was there. But in some regard, they were both sort of on the same team, right? They both held debt against Batman. All right, how should the court resolve this conflict? So in one regard, the house was worth $100,000 a couple years, at least about a year ago, and the bid was worth 50. That suggests that something is out of whack, right? That the amount is not there. You also have some of the sort of the fairness and due diligence concerns, where if the property is worth 100 and the only bidder there is from the second bank, and they bid 50, that maybe they should have had a reschedule the sale. Maybe they should put a floor or a minimum amount in there. I mentioned also that the Texas anti-deficiency statute applies, which we talked about in class, which looks to fair market value, right? And how do you calculate fair market value? Again, a good estimate of that would be the sales price a year earlier. All right, now let's walk through it. Gotham Bank had their first secured mortgage, right? I'm sorry. Gotham Bank had the first secured mortgage. The sale brought in $50,000. So all that would go towards satisfying Gotham's note. But there's still $25,000 left over. Does Arkham Bank get anything? The answer is no, because it's the second one. So under strict application of anti-deficiency statute, Gotham would get a judgment of $25,000, and Arkham gets a judgment of $5,000. But I think under Murphy, it's arguable that the sale can be set aside or canceled, and maybe even you could have Batman suing the banks for some sort of breach of fiduciary duty. All right. Question number 3. I'll do the A+ in a minute. Question number 3. No? Question's a little bit more dry than the other ones. Involve some numbers. Number 3. Oh, okay. So the student writes, as the first in priority lender, Gotham Bank will argue is entitled to the proceeds from the sale to cover its losses of $75,000. Because Batacre was sold for only $50,000, their losses will not be completely covered, and Arkham should not receive anything. That's correct. Gotham and Arkham would seek deficiency judgments against Batman for $25,000 and $5,000 respectively. Correct. However, Batman will argue under Murphy that the bank had fiduciary duty to him to do due diligence to obtain a fair price for Batacre. Correct. Because Batacre bought up $100,000, it's not likely $50,000 is a fair price. Especially because it does not appear the bank giving extensions to Batman. Good advertising the sale. There's only one buyer, rep from Arkham. The sale, very good. If the court doesn't set aside the foreclosure for it to be sold at a more fair price, then Arkham and Gotham may still be prevented from covering all their losses under the Texas statute. Good. And they actually got the statute. Gotham's judgment will be limited to the difference between the balance and the fair market value of the property. That's correct. That's in the statute. Arkham, although second in priority, will be able to recover only after Gotham. That's probably a 10 right there. That's a very good answer. I don't think I can complain about anything with that answer. This is a very good answer. I have no idea who wrote. I couldn't remember if I wanted to. I think everything was there is correct. All right. Question number 3. Yes, Julian? Yeah, I mean, again, the answer, the resolution here is a little bit less clear, but I think at a minimum, you would say the court would set aside the foreclosure sale. Or you could say that the court will simply not enforce a deficiency judgment. Or you could say the court may actually allow Batman to go after the banks to recover from them, right? I think there's actually a range of answers what you could put here. Yeah, but this question is a little bit more cut and dry. I don't think it's quite so sort of open-ended. All right, number 3, questions. No one liked the mortgage question. I know. It's like, oh, mortgages. It's not. But I don't have to ask it every year, but just about every year ask a mortgage question. And by the way, I've not written your exam yet. I have no idea what the question is even going to be. I don't even think about it till after review because I don't want to give it away inadvertently. I thought about it. I'll do it later this week. Don't try and drag it out of me. That's not nice. I think I told you, one year I had a guy sat right there, not the best student. And I did the review during a finals period, which was a mistake. So, oh, let me do the review closer to the exam. That'll be nice. But I had already written an exam at that point. He's like, did you ask about X? I'm like, no. And of course I did, because I can't lie. And so I can't play poker. So he got a question at me. I'm like, sure. She transferred out. And he didn't. Actually, I got complaints from the professor at the other school about him also. So it's that stuff carries with you. Reputation carries with you. So you can't escape things. All right. What? Oof is right. All right. Anything else? Number 3. Can we move to number 4? Oof. Number 4. Okay. All right, number 4. Okay. Okay. So this gets into a con law issue. Joker announces that he wishes to open an insane asylum on Arkacre for people with mental disabilities. If you don't know, the comic books Arkham Asylum is a very famous property in the DC universe. All the villains are stored. The Gotham City Council promptly enacts a land use regulation that allows the zoning board to deny a permit for insane asylums with more than 5 residents if the public safety requests it, unless the asylum builds 100-foot electric fence around the perimeter. Kind of crazy, right? Now, to be clear, did Joker actually open up the asylum? No, he intended to, which actually makes a difference for grandfathering. A lot of people sort of missed that. They assumed he did. Okay. And again, the city council enacted the regulation that gives the zoning board discretion for an insane asylum with more than 5 people. Now, I'm just guessing. An asylum with more than 5 people is not going to, with fewer than 5 people is not going to work, right? These don't have a lot of people in it, right? You can't make the numbers work with only 5 people. So it's going to be all of them. And it says if the public safety requires it. What does that mean, public safety, right? We speak about the issue of delegation, right? Can a legislature, an elected legislature, delegate to a zoning board, which is not elected, the power to decide what's in the public interest? And the answer generally is no, right? The public interest is decided by elected officials. And this gets to the difference between a special exception and a variance, right? With a special exception, the legislature spells out some clarity when it'll be granted, right? But they can't give these sort of discretionary choices of what's in the public interest. Variances, on the other hand, are meant for sort of special, I'll use a different word, are meant for sort of rare situations where there's a hardship. And those cases that sort of balance hardship and balance equity. But with a special exception, the answer is no. Then there's the actual remedy, a 100-foot electric fence. Now, that just sounds crazy, right? That sounds insane, right? Do you really need a 100-foot electric fence around an asylum? Maybe like 10 feet might work, right? 100 feet, is that really necessary? The question is whether even that has rationality, that's just too far of a burden to be justified under any sort of standard of review. Okay. But we find the city found that criminals often congregate around these groups. So, okay, we have crime, but again, you really need a 100-foot electric fence. It's kind of insane. No pun intended. And we all see that there are no other insane asylums in the city, so this is basically targeting one and only one property. Right? They're going after the Joker. The Joker challenges the constitutionality of the land use regulation in Gotham's court. And again, the question is, how should the court resolve this challenge? You have to tell me an answer. Is it valid or not? I make very clear, do not consider statutory issues. Like, I didn't want you to talk about the Fair Housing Act or anything like that. I want to talk about the Constitution, U.S. Constitution. All right. All right. So there's a couple of different directions we can go here. One of which involves actually property law. Is this a variance or special exception? And I think it is a special exception, right? This is not like a designed sort of in the event of an unusual circumstance. They're targeting a very specific thing that happened already. And because you have a special exception, I don't think you can have this public safety language. Remember the Cope case? You can't have based on the general welfare. I think this goes too far. So I think the statute is unconstitutional on those grounds, right? If you just wrote that, I think you're actually in good shape. You got most of the question. You can also talk about Village of Belterra, which is a First Amendment challenge, right? The right of people to live together. Now, that was a case where people lived together because they were to be, friends and non-related family members. But here you have people being forced to live there probably against their will. So is there a First Amendment issue? Probably not. Just marshals in dissent. I think that's not going to win. Then you have the issue of spot zoning, which came up in the city of Rochester case, right? We have a zoning law that applies to one and only one property. I can tell you it's only asylum in the town. So you might actually have a spot zoning issue, although in that case, they were pretty deferential. You also might think about amortization, but again, he hadn't opened up his property yet. So there's not really a Pennsylvania Northwestern case, the Moon Township case, right? Because he hasn't opened it up yet. One other issue that I thought of, and I don't know if anyone actually wrote about in the exam, where Joker never actually applied for the permit, right? He never did anything. Generally, how can you sue the government when you haven't even applied for the permit? Can you even do that? So maybe this suit is premature, because for all we know, maybe the city have said, okay, you meet the general interest, right? But then again, you have the 100-foot electric fence. It's like that's crazy. I don't have to do that. But at least in Penn Central, that issue was sort of raised. Okay. A lot you can do with this question. This one's more interesting than Morgan's question, I know. Questions on number 4. Kelsey?
I think I kind of lost my mind.
No pun intended.
I brought up City of Phoenix.
Oh, Bernie, Cleveland Living Center. We didn't. Did I?
So I was like at the beginning of.
Oh, that's what you were doing. Shoot, it's actually a very relevant case. I might have actually mentioned it that semester. Did I mention City of Cleveland in this class? Did I? Okay, good. Then I think that'd be fair game.
Because I also don't know anything about DC Comics, so.
That's okay. That's okay. You don't have to. It's not.
Well,
Yeah.
like Joker would have bad people in the asylums.
Well, I wrote criminals. That criminals often congregate outside. Yeah.
It didn't matter that they were trying to make all of these arguments about how the
Good.
neighbor.
I will give you credit for that. Yeah.
Properties.
That's actually what I was going for. So there's an entire line of First Amendment cases called secondary effects, where why can the government regulate strip clubs? Well, it's not because what's going on inside, it's because criminals congregate outside. And I think in 2018 I talked about that, and I did it this semester. Like the book actually shrank the discussion of First Amendment in this edition. So what you said would have been absolutely correct. Like I don't think I would ask this question this way this year because again, there's so much less on First Amendment stuff. It's one of the challenges of giving old exams because the material does cover weird. That's why I don't reuse questions. My goodness, people use question. Professors who reuse questions are risky because I don't think I'm consistent year to year. I talk about different things. But you're good, Kelsey. Yeah, that was a due process issue, but it could have just all been a freedom of association case just as well if the court wanted to litigate it that way, right?
Just a
Good.
follow-up question. So, are, you-
Reliupa.
so that, when they say institutionalized persons, they don't
Yes.
mean.
Yes, they do. They do.
Okay.
Yeah. So RLUIPA, the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, applies to prisons and group homes. So Reliupa would apply to this institution, assuming it accepts federal money, which is not facts, not evidence, right? But Reliupa would govern, for example, a state a mental facility. But there's no religious issue here, right? Reliupa is about religious issues, which I didn't raise here. I've asked religious questions before, but not in this one. Alex, I think your hand was up, then Hillary.
There's one thing that several conditions are frustrating is just like the parenthetical, the statutory issue, because.
And I think to Kelsey point, I didn't want to talk about Reliupa or RIFRA. That's actually also what I was getting at. Yeah.
Okay. Just because like I thought like I think Pennsylvania Northwest was distinguishable, like
That was a state conla issue.
yeah. Oh, okay. So that would have been fine to discuss it.
So look, I said constitutional questions. I said you're bound by the U.S. Constitution. That's not the Pennsylvania Constitution. So, and I think also amortization was not relevant because he never built anything.
Right. Well, that's why I was distinguishing.
I think you could distinguish on those grounds. That would have been fair.
This question is kind of weird to me because when I call right now.
Yeah.
If there's case we talked about, but not in depth, can we still rely on it? Because when I did this, I don't know why I thought.
You did the Cleburne case also?
Yeah.
How much did I talk about? I don't remember. They didn't mention. Yeah, I know it's unfair. Look, if you did that, I know the case, so I would be okay with that. And I'm like 90% sure when I taught this case in 2018, I did more in Cleburne, which is why I made it for people with disabilities. That's actually why I wrote that question, if I remember correctly. So I wouldn't ask the question this way this year because we didn't talk about it, or at least at any length. Yeah. The key is public safety, right? That's actually run afoul. I'm going to change the question, okay? They can deny the permit if there's more than 5 people and just strike that out and say they build a 100-foot fence, right? If the statute says, do you have 5 people? Yes. Did you build a 100-foot fence? Yes. Okay, you get your permit. That I think actually would have valid delegation of power. You still have the spot zoning issues and otherwise, but that actually was a good delegation issue. It's a discretionary issue of does the public safety require it? That's actually where they run afoul of the delegation doctrine. Let's see what number 4 wrote on the A+ answer. Okay. All right. Joker will argue that this is unconstitutional use of the police power. The city council will argue that there's a valid regulation because there's the power to regulate the health, safety, welfare, morals of the people. The council argues under Euclid that there's a rational basis for regulation because criminals congregate outside group homes and this threatens public safety. Okay, I can go with that. Joker will argue that under Pennsylvania Northwestern, by the announcing that he was going to open the asylum, should be grandfathered in. See, that doesn't work because nothing was built, so you don't become a prior non-conforming use. That doesn't work. Right. The council likely argue that plaintiff in this case had actually begun running the business and Joker is not. Yeah, I mean, you can give an argument that's completely wrong. I just don't know the value of doing that. I think just like he didn't actually do it. The second part of the sentence is correct. Joker will also argue based on Cope. Okay, good with spot zoning. I'm sorry, with the there's a delegation issue of power, too much discretion to running public safety. Good. Joker argued discretionary zoning, exclusionary zoning, like in Mount Laurel. Mount Laurel's about race. I don't know how much Mount Laurel applies to this one. I think Cleburne's a much better case than Mount Laurel. Also like the dissent in Belterra. This burns right of association and privacy. Yeah, you can make that point. You can say dissent. That's allowed. I don't think it works. I'm also seeing what's lacking here. The question wasn't really answered. Who wins? How do you resolve it? I think Joker wins or Joker loses, right? Why so serious, right? So someone's got to win. Someone's got to win or lose. If anyone saw the movie Batman Begins, you'll see Heath Ledger. All right. I didn't like the Batman. I didn't like it. I tried watching. I got really bored. But the guy from Twilight, I didn't like it. It was. I turned off after 5 minutes. I couldn't even. I'm sorry. I'd never seen the Twilight movies either. And I didn't like Joker, the one with what's his name, Joaquin Phoenix. I didn't like. It wasn't what I was expecting. It's too serious. I didn't like it. Nothing blew up. Just wasn't. No explosions, no chases. Anyway, any movie nominated for an award, I'm just not going to like it. And any Academy Award movie, I just do not watch it on deliberately because I'm just not going to enjoy it. All right. Anything else? Number 4. I have bad taste in most things. Anything else on number 4?
It turns out. So do you think Joker wins here?
I think Joker wins. It's facially unconstitutional because of the public safety thing. That'd be my answer if I had to write this one. All the other ones lose, but I think the spot zoning actually is non-trivial because there's only one in town applies to one property. I think this actually might be a violation of due process as well. But I think under the delegation doctrine, this is a loser. But I can go either way. All right. Anything else? Number 4. It's the last one, right on schedule. Number 5. Okay, and the 5th one's, as I described, kind of the policy question. But policy doesn't mean forget everything you've learned, just make stuff up, right? You have to actually give me authority. So it says, often land use regulations closely implicate questions of race, socioeconomic status, and property values. And keep in mind that last one. People forgot that one. It's not just race, socioeconomic. It's what's the value of property, right? Put that one in there quite deliberately. State governments may make zoning decisions based on some, but not all these factors. That is, maybe a government focuses entirely on, let's keep property values high. Who cares about racial issues, right? People says, well, let's be like Mount Laurel and who cares what property values are? We need to have people to live here affordably. Okay, then the question becomes, discuss what role courts should play both under the federal and state constitutions. Wink, wink, New Jersey. I'm telling you, New Jersey. That's why I'm telling you that, right? State constitution in scrutinizing land use. Okay, so for one, talk about New Jersey. So of course, Mount Laurel, right? You have to talk about Mount Laurel. I said state constitutions, and that was a case based on the New Jersey Constitution. There are a lot of cases you can talk about here about aesthetics. So you have the Palm Beach case, right? I know Stoyanov, I gave you the sort of the excerpt, but what does the house look like? You mentioned Reform-Liupa. Yeah, bring in Reform-Liupa. That's a religious issue, right? Shelley against Kramer, racial covenants. Belterra, the discrimination against the lovely hippies from Long Island, right? In Kelo, Justice Thomas' dissent spoke about these issues somewhat, just as Justice O'Connor did. There are a lot of directions you can take this question. This was really open-ended. Let's just see what the A+ answer put in. Okay. Sorry?
There's a lot of words.
This is actually quite long, and I'm guessing this person had a lot of space at the end, which they were saving or whatever. Under both federal and state constitution, the courts have a duty to ensure they uphold the equal protection of citizens and prevent discrimination and regulation under the facade of regulations, something legitimate like property values. However, the court's ability to do so is limited by the overwhelming precedent established of applying rational basis and land use regulations. Disputes, for example, in Euclidean zoning had a secondary effect of regulating people's certain socioeconomic statuses, blah, 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 as well as what activities the court upheld was a rational basis is way too long. The importance of property values is also won out against what some have argued is a constitutional right of free expression, like case like Stoyanov. Belterra, scrutiny, this is way too long, and there's actually not much here. It's a decent answer, but with this much space, but a lot more actual analysis. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess going off that, question 5 seems really broad, and I feel like you would just like dump cases or that have other parts. So I guess I'm like trying to. Like,
Trying to use the word dump, right? Trying to use the word discuss. Yeah, dump just sounds like, never mind. I'm going to cancel the last day of class. But what I would love to have seen, I mean, again, I give you this advice, but it's sort of hard to on the day of the exam, is go through the question, right? The question listed 3 different things: the race, socioeconomic status, and property values. How about, say, racial relations? Let's talk about Belterra. I'm not Belterra, Mount Laurel, right? Socioeconomic, maybe talk about Belterra. Maybe talk about Kilo, right? Property values. So you have the Palm Beach case, right? You have the Stoyanov case and others, right? Actually go through the question and maybe give a couple cases in the structure of the way I asked the question. And that way you're not just dumping cases from your outline, you're actually answering the darn question. For race, you have Shelley v. Kramer, right? You have a lot of cases to talk about. And specifically, though, what role courts should play in scrutinizing them? And the key word there is scrutinizing. So the student here, what I'd like to mention the rational basis standard. And you can say under most of these tests, you're using a rational basis review, which is very deferential. And the courts do not scrutinize it. And maybe say, maybe that's wrong, right? Maybe the court should do what Justice Marshall did in the Belterra dissent, right? You can make those sort of strong answers. Again, I'm not crazy about it. This is really long and actually it's pretty thin too. But what I find, and you'll see this, by the time most students get to number 5, they're out of time. And this is actually number 5 on part 2, so they're really out of time, right? This is like the last 5 minutes. So you just dump, use your choice of words, whatever you got on the paper, or at least on the screen. So the number 5 answers are not always the strongest. In fact, number 5 in part 1 is usually much better than number 5 in part 2 because people here are panicking and running out of time. But yeah, this is just, what's that Mark Twain phrase? I'm sorry my letter was so long. I wish I had more time to make it shorter. Because if you have more time, it becomes shorter. Okay, what on number 5? What on number 5? Did you all get it perfect? No, no. Nothing on number 5? Okay, go ahead, please. Well, so I gave you a couple. One was Stoyanov, which I gave you kind of the summary of. But at least in your reading, it was a Palm Beach County. Remember with the mansion by the beach? That might be one you can talk about. Stoyanov is a good one because that was the design of the house that didn't look very nice. That was, remember I complained the book took out a good case. So in fairness, I probably wouldn't ask you this question this year because the case I like was removed. But at least that was in the book from the past. We did cover it. All right, number 5. Going once. Going twice.
For this question, I really kind of just focus on Shelley Kramer.
Okay.
And then I kind of started talking about, how precedent and the violation of the equal protection rights in that case and things like that. And I basically kind of just said like, based because of your race and your status and the subjective value of your property, you shouldn't be able to be treated differently than other Americans. Like, is that something that I could argue?
And I would push that to the courts, right? Because that's the frame of the question: is how should the courts review or scrutinize those actions?
Right. So, because before that, I kind of said, like, I basically kind of explained how in the case the court held this, and that they couldn't really get involved because of state action doctrine.
Good. There was a limitation on their power to get involved. That's actually a good answer. Yeah, that's good. I like it.
Okay.
I like it. I like it.
And then, are you okay with if I said that the Fair Housing Act was a direct response to
Good.
B. Kramer?
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, the Fair Housing Act forced the court to scrutinize because it was no longer a matter of common law; it was a statutory issue. So when the Congress passes a statute that gives a framework with different factors, you have to cover it. Good answer. Anyone else? Number 5.
When you get a question that's kind of wide open like this, obviously you can just spend a lot of time writing, and maybe not a lot of time like getting actually good analysis.
That's not a good idea, but go,
well,
yeah.
Obviously, we limit each answer to 200 words.
I
In
would.
particular, something that is as wide open as this, trying to keep it as narrow.
I would. Right, because what often happens is in the last when people go over the word limit, I just stop reading halfway through and they don't get their points.
You said this is thin, so how many points is this?
Well, again, it'll probably be 9, maybe even 10 points. It's so long, but this could be done in far fewer words.
So the longer the more points.
No, what I mean by that is there's a lot here and enough to get points, but you could have written the same number of points with far fewer words, right? There's a lot of fluff. Someone used the word fluff before, right? There's fluff in here. Oh, that was used. You said fluff. There's fluff in here, and the fluff just pads the answer. So I would remove the fluff. But still, it's a good answer. Right? They got 3 or 4 cases that are relevant. That's right, 9 or 10 if I had to guess. And again, by the time you get to the last one, the answers get a little bit weak. So I probably picked the best as I could. All right. What else? Anything on the exam in general? Anything on anything? Hillary? Oh, 1, 2. Yeah, go ahead.
If it says we're in Texas, if it just follows modern, we don't even look, we just have like creating in Texas.
I'll usually just say you're in a common law jurisdiction because I understand Texas is a bit of a mixed bag. I might say you follow Texas mortgage law or Texas Anti-Deficiency Act, but I generally won't say you're in Texas, period, because that can mean a lot of things. If I say you're in New Jersey, though, you know exactly what that means. Texas is a bit of a mixed bag. New Jersey, it's all whatever, modern. Yes.
I think I have a question about the buckets, the taking.
The buckets. Oh my goodness. All right. Yeah.
Because eminent domain is the police power, so it goes in the police power bucket? Or
Eminent domain doesn't fit into a bucket, right?
okay,
Right. It's not a bucket, right? When we're talking about the bucket, sorry. When we're talking about the buckets, we're talking about different types of regulatory takings, right? With eminent domain, the government says, we want to take your property. So the debate is how much you pay us and is it for public use, right? But there's a taking. The bucket analysis is focusing on, is there a taking, right? Do we decide there's a taking? When they want to bulldoze Suzakilo's house, there's a taking. They want to take a property. There's no dispute. The dispute is there public use? Number 1. Number 2, what are you going to pay for the just compensation? So no bucket for the eminent domain. That's not a bucket at all. The buckets only come in when the government does not want to pay. That's when the bucket comes in. Actually, that's the way of thinking about it, right? If the government says, no, we're not going to pay you any money, then go to the buckets and start digging for coal or anything else. Yeah.
I heard something before.
Okay.
So, and, I don't know if this is right or not, but one of the things I thought of when reading this was how it talks about denying the permit and it does the unless the asylum builds 100-foot electric fence.
Yeah.
I thought about exactions and that maybe.
Oh, that's creative. Yeah,
there
I
was-
think that's actually good.
I kind of said there was a connection between building the fence and having the asylum, but it was not roughly proportional.
Oh, under the
Like,
Kuntz and no, that's actually very creative. I don't think anyone did that year. You know what? I didn't teach exactions that year, so no one put that in the answer. But that's actually very good. That's a good thought. Yeah.
So that
That-
could work in a situation.
That could be, but because he never actually applied for it, you'd have to go under Kuntz, as they say, spending money. So I think you'd have to use Kuntz as well. That's creative. That's good. I like it. Yeah, it always happens. People think of things that I didn't think of. It's always very useful. What else? Duke.
Just wanted to know this law school sent us email about Turkey, New Jersey.
Oh God. Really? Bring your own oxygen supply. Yeah, Alex. Yeah. That was my exam 1 year. You may have seen it. Yeah, 1 year actually. That was my final question, was to decide Shelley on property grounds, on law of covenants. That was my question 1 year. I don't remember what year it was, but you can find it on the list. And the entire thing was there privity, horizontal privity? Did the burn run to the family? Was there notice could be enforced in equitable cert? The entire question was Shelley v. Kramer, forget the Constitution, just doing property law. That was actually a good question. Yes. I don't think I would ask you that question because I don't think I taught it this year. If I mentioned it was very briefly, so I don't think I would do that. Don't worry. No, but look, I can't stop students from doing it though, because they're going to do it anyway. I've had people say, "Oh, can I talk about a case from torts?" I'm like, "No, don't do that. They'll do it anyway." If I know the case, or sometimes it happens that people cite a property case I've never read, and like and of course they have a commercial outline. I don't even know the case. I have to go look it up. Like, what case is this? And I don't usually give that credit because it's not something I taught you. If it's in that big red book on your desk, it's fair game. And Cleburne is in the big red book. Yeah. I don't remember. I'll see. All right, Julianne.
So I guess. Write your answer in a way that's not to the opposite.
Yes. I just searched. Cleburne is not in your book. I might have mentioned it. If I did, then I did, but I don't think I did, but maybe I did. I don't know. It's in my Conlaw case book. It's in the other, that's why I wasn't sure. What else? I do. Several of them. Imagine that. Yeah.
I want to ask because the first question sample answer addressed it. What's to say if you run across a covenant question, a matter of property, horizontal privity, law of benefit, not contract law, well, we're just saying horizontal privity.
I can't imagine that's really relevant.
Okay.
I mean, you could say, of course, the covenant can be enforced as a matter of contract law between the two parties. That's fair game, but that would depend on what I'm actually asking.
Are you okay with bullet points?
No. I want sentences.
Like,
No bullets.
And then also to clarify, horizontal privity, like not within the covenant, is not privy of contract.
Correct. Proof of contract is any contract between A and B. And that's still binding between A and B as a matter of contract law. That I think was Ivan's question a minute ago.
They can still have horizontal privity.
Well, usually if you have horizontal privity, you necessarily have privy of contract. It's hard to have one without the other. What else? Going once? Going twice? Thank you all for a good semester. Appreciate it. Thank you.